Hopefully you've been practicing your arpeggio a whole heap, and you can now join your A7 and D7 arpeggios together, because we're back talking about single lines now for this one. So what's really important now is that you start to learn to actually kind of use them a little bit in a musical way instead of always just playing eighth notes. Now the way to do this is to start imagining a blues in your mind and making sure that you only use arpeggio tones of the chord that would be being played by the band. So for example, a normal, let's say a blues in the key of A again, instead of now playing arpeggios up and down, you might start changing direction a little bit with the chords. So you're still playing 8 notes, but we're no longer being kind of strict about it being, you don't even have to be strict about it being 8 notes on each one exactly, to tell the truth. But you can change direction a little bit as well. So if we set, I'll keep it fairly straight here so you can hopefully see the idea. But we might do something like this: A7, 3, 4, D7, A7, D7, A7, E7, I'm sorry, I had to think about what arpeggio I was using there for a sec, so you often use a different one. But the idea now, you can start to hear really that all of the chord changes are going on. I'm starting to muck around a little bit with the patterns. There's some quite nice ones like this, A7 like this. That's the 9th fret thinner string, 5th fret, then 8th fret on the 2nd string. And if you move those top 2 notes down to 8, 5, 7, 5, you end up moving to D7. So you're A7, D7, which is a lick I think Joe Satriani uses it in, I think he does it in the key of G in a song called, the blues one, I think it's called Big Bad Moon. I think, it might be wrong, but he does this lick like So really what's going on is A7, D7, back to A7. It's really obvious now, the change. Hopefully you can hear this is the whole idea now of making these changes. A really good note is the note C sharp, which is, because this is the note C sharp would be the 3rd in the key of A, and if you move that down a semitone, it becomes the 7th, the flat 7th, in the key of D. So just by changing that one note, you can kind of hear that change has happened already here. Start to get a bit of a flavour for this. That's the next stage for you now, is to start to try and use these arpeggios in a musical way. Sometimes you don't even, like quite often I've explained this using 8 notes kind of trick, because it's a good way of kind of forcing yourself to think on the move, so you can't kind of stop and think about too much, because in the real world you can't stop and think, you have to just kind of let it flow. So it's good training for that. That's the whole idea of using using the 8 notes for each one. But it's also important that you learn just to make it music and play a few notes. You know, be able to... arpeggio tones, great little things, great devices for making these chord changes. So, of course, the thing that I've introduced here, which I kind of should have mentioned at the beginning of this lesson, is I've been using, of course, the E7 arpeggio. Same chord sequence I've been talking about all of the way through, just a normal 12-bar blues, a quick change one though, with the little D7 in the 2nd bar. So that E7 arpeggio I'm using is exactly the same as the D7, just moved up 2 frets. There are other ways of doing it, which comes a little bit later when you start to learn how to do this thing in what's called the 5 position technique. So you learn how to play A7 in 5 ways and D7 in 5 ways, and then you join whatever ones are nearby. That's kind of the next level, but it's really important that you be able to get together to join this A7 and the D7 together before you start getting into all of the fancy multi-position stuff. If you want something to practice this with, there's a backing track available from my website for free. Hey! It comes from a play-along CD which I sell on my site called Really Useful Play-Along Tracks. However, the 2 most important tracks that I kind of felt like I should give away for it, because a lot of you guys that don't have a lot of money for lessons probably don't have a lot of money to spend on CDs too. So there's 2 tracks that you can get for free. You need to go to the products section and click on Really Useful Play-Along Tracks, and where it's got the track listing, there's 2 free MP3 downloads. One for a blues in A, which would be a great backing for you to practice using between your 2 arpeggios, and the other one that's there, incidentally, is a pop blues, a pop song rather, just a regular pop tune in the key of G, which is the one that you should be using for practicing your G major scales in your 5 positions. So you might want to go and download those. Remember, do the 8th note thing to force yourself to learn where the positions are. Once you're feeling a bit comfortable with that, start breaking it down using just little phrases, trying to remember to only use A7 and D7 arpeggio tones when the chords would be that played by the backing. So you play A7 arpeggio, shift to D7 arpeggio, back to A7 arpeggio, and stay on A7 for another bar. Then move to D for 2 bars, 3, 4, here's the second bar. And then back to A for 1 bar, 2, 3, 4, sorry, for 2 bars. I should know my blues by now. E7 for 1 bar, D7 for 1 bar, A7 for 1 bar, and E7 for 1 bar. So A7, D, A, D, A again, E, D, A, back to E, and finish on, of course, A. Have fun with linking your arpeggios, and I'll see you for some more real soon. Bye bye.